Welcome back to another episode of Living Vividly. I'm Jackie Hedich, your health coach.
I'm Daphne Olivier, founder of the Unconventional Dietitians.
We are joined today again by our friend Jade Hayes. We're going to talk about breathing as the foundation of health, something that I don't think many of us really think about all that often. So we're super excited to have
I'm
you
excited.
back.
Yeah. This is a topic that I find is so important and often underlooked. It's kind of like been shunned into the woo-woo realm, to be honest. If you're not doing yoga.
Because everybody knows how to breathe because we do it all day.
Right, exactly.
Like everybody knows how to eat because we do it all the time.
It's the subconscious thing we don't have to think about. Unless you're a yogi or someone who's seeking transcendental states, not many people are really looking at breathwork and how it can be used to enhance their health, performance, whether that's mental or physical performance. You know, it is kind of like the key that unlocks everything. So I'm excited to dive into it and help people understand why it's so important.
Well, you have a question?
Go for it.
I'm going to say, tell us, why is it so important?
Yeah.
Don't keep it a secret.
Don't keep it a secret. Don't hold it in. There are three lenses we can look at breath through. And one is biomechanical, how it changes the shape of our body and how we distribute forces. The other is biochemical. And then the third is psychological. I want to try to nail all three in this podcast. So we might kind of hop around because there is a feedback loop, right? It's not like there's not one thing that changes the breath. It can come from either three lenses. So if you have deep psychological trauma, maybe you've gone through a really hard divorce or had something traumatic happen, that can change the rate of your breath, which if that trauma isn't healed or you haven't overcome or you have to sit in the space for a while, it can become habitual, overbreathing.
So the trauma would be, like, obviously if something happens really quickly, like you get in a car accident, like it's going to definitely change the way that you're breathing.
Absolutely.
But if that trauma is prolonged, like a divorce. So I have a friend that's going on like year 4 of her divorce. Then it becomes, in that instance, it might be more habitual.
Absolutely. And it could be something like, let's say, a childhood where the child didn't feel safe. That's not even meaning that there was physical abuse there.
Right.
Whatever reason, whether it's the child's perception of safety or actual safety, if they perceive that they're unsafe, they will develop those breathing patterns in childhood and they can carry it all the way into adulthood. So even if someone's listening saying, yeah, but I haven't had any trauma and I don't have to worry about anything, maybe, but maybe not too. It could be something that's been transferred through like the habitual development in childhood that you haven't really looked at, and it just becomes normal and it feels normal, but it's actually not. The other piece of that for the psychological component, or for like, let's go into biomechanical, because I talked about childhood and childhood trauma. Another thing can start where your breath pattern can be changed in the beginning of your life because of the foods we're eating. If you weren't breastfed, you're bottle fed, you're not using your tongue to have to, push that areola up into the top of the palate, then a bottle is going to make a much quicker flow of that milk. So they don't have to use the tongue. This is going to create a more narrow jaw, narrow and high palate, and that's going to prevent the tongue from being able to fit properly in the mouth. Then this kid might grow up a little bit more. We've, been raised on processed foods. Weston A. Price, I'm sure you're very familiar with his work, did a whole study on how when we take normal foods that we've been raised on, evolutionarily, not us, but evolutionarily, and you replace those foods with modern day foods, just in a short amount of time, you'll get jaws that narrow.
A generation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just one generation. Crooked teeth, and all of that affects how we breathe. So if we're being raised without the substance to chew and it's overly processed, that can also create a breathing pattern disorder from childhood that lasts into adulthood.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of like I don't want to say native groups, but they're out in the forest and they have beautiful jaws and beautiful teeth versus like a modern
narrow. And then what happens is whenever our jaw narrows and our palate lifts, we have that high palate, tongue doesn't fit like I talked about. Now the tongue can't sit in its home. It should rest at the roof of the mouth with 3/4 of the tongue kind of suction cupped up, which leaves a small space in the back for us to nasal breathe. But if that's not happening, if the tongue can't fit, it'll fall to the floor, which makes us kind of open our mouth and forces us into mouth breathing. Well, the body knows. Do this for me. Open your mouth, and I want you to pull your head back, like where your shoulders are stacked in line, or the ears are stacked in line with the shoulders. And you're going to try to take a deep breath.
Thumbnail opportunity here.
Ugly chin.
So take a deep breath. You kind of feel some restriction there. Now I want you to push your head forward. mouth still open, take that deep breath. Feel it's easier. You have less restriction. This is a big part of where forward head posture comes from, because the brain will reorganize how it holds itself in space to make breathing easier, because breath is at the top of the totem pole, or at the top of the priority list when it comes to how important we deem certain functions.
We're all starting to look like ET because of our mouth shape?
If you're kinda, right? Like if we don't have the ability to close our mouth, then we look for the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
The other option is to move our head forward. There's a lot of things that contribute to forward head posture. This is one of those things.
So why should we not breathe through our mouth?
So biomechanically, I just discussed how forward head starts to happen when we're breathing through our mouth. That's going to change the load on our pelvis. It's going to change our body weight and how we shift, where we carry the center of gravity. As all of that moves forward, it changes the load distribution on our knees. Could cause knee pain.
So I'm going to pause you for just a second. So the ideal thing is that we keep our mouth closed and we would be using just our nose and our nasal cavity, because there are filters there to be able to filter the air, to warm the air, all of that stuff. So ideally, we want to keep our mouth closed and only breathe through our nose.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Is that inhaling and exhaling?
Yes.
Okay, so
There's an in-between
finish your thing
space.
because I have like a...
Okay. Write the question down.
Yeah, I'm going to write it right now.
There is an in-between space, and I do want to cover that because there's some kind of playroom when you're learning how to nasal breathe and train at the same time. Let's say I have a competition. My goal is going to, let's say I did Cajun Strong last year. So my goal there was to train nose breathing the entire bout. So it was 10 rounds. We did a 400-meter run, 20 push-ups, 3 hill sprints, and then a 30-foot, 30-pound pull with like P-rows. So to go and train that, when I first started, I could get through like 2 rounds without gasping for air, right? But my training was, okay, I'm really focused on my endurance. The least energy we have to put toward thinking of how we breathe, the more efficient we can become biomechanically and also endurance. So I'm thinking, if I want to win this thing, I need to have the least amount of stress in my system possible. So when I'm training, I'm going to make my training almost like a little more stressful. So my goal was to push or to force the closure of my mouth and to push as long as I could while nasal breathing. Then I would stop training as soon as I couldn't nasal breathe anymore. I'd recover and I'd go back again and run a few rounds until I couldn't again. And that's how I got to the point where I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe there was some like mouth breathing that I had to do toward round 9 and 10 of the hill sprints. But for the majority of that race, I mean, my mouth was closed, tongue pressed to the roof of the mouth. I'm nasal breathing. Y'all, I haven't ran. I was not running before this race. I think it had been a year since I had even started running. And a friend of mine was like, hey, you want to do this thing? I'm like, yeah, sure. She's like, you want to do the half or the whole? I'm like, I'm not going to do the half. So sign me up. Let's do the whole thing. I ran one round of what I just said. And I was like, oh shit, I've got to train for this. This is a problem. I go straight to my breath because I know that that's the top priority of the brain. And if I can breathe well, everything else is going to fall into place. And I even ran it barefoot. So that's another stressor. Kinda. I'm not having that cushion to absorb, the impact, but also because I'm barefoot, I'm getting more feedback. So if you're really focusing on fine tuning these details, what is the foundation of health? Well, that is breath first. Psyche is actually top. Breath is right underneath. That's maybe a whole different podcast. But when I'm taking away the thing that the brain's going to stress over. If I feel like I'm running out of oxygen, I'm going to reduce the amount of speed, power, agility, coordinate. Everything goes to the back burner because your breath is the most important thing. Well, if I can do that effortlessly, then my brain has more energy to focus on all these other things easier. I really think that that's why I won the race, because I've been strength training, but I was not doing anything in the endurance realm. But because I trained that way, I feel like that's what gave me the upper advantage. Okay, so biomechanically, we kind of covered a little bit of that. Let me go into intra-abdominal pressure. If we're mouth breathing, we can't manage the pressure in our abdominal cavity. That's going to affect how we stabilize our spine. It's going to affect our pelvic floor. So that can lead to more back pain, knee pain, hip pain, back pain, all because of how we're distributing forces, all because we are mouth breathing versus nose breathing. When we're nasal breathing, we can. It's not definitive. Just because we're nose breathing does not mean that we're automatically engaging or using the diaphragm to breathe, although it becomes easier. So someone has to train to use their diaphragm if they haven't used it in a while. Just switching to your nose is not going to force that to happen. There might be some diaphragmatic stretches. You might have to really do some work to open up and reuse the posterior fibers of the diaphragm. But in general, nasal breathing is going to encourage more diaphragmatic use in the breath, and that plays a role in spinal stability. So biomechanically, it can be the root cause for a lot of injuries. That's why when people come to me, the first thing I look at is their breathing. I don't care if they have foot pain. I don't care if they have it doesn't matter, especially if it's coming from the neck or the shoulders. So again, as the mouth is open, we're still talking in that biomechanical realm. The mouth hangs open, the scalenes get tight, pec minors get tight, shoulders roll forward. Now we're looking at neck and shoulder pain. They might go to a surgeon or a PT, and they might look biomechanically at what's going on, but they may not look at the driver, which is how we're breathing. So if these people are office workers, for example, there's something called email apnea, where you look at your screen, you pull up, you've got 50 emails, and all of a sudden your brain's like overwhelmed. The blue light doesn't help. That's already spiking your cortisol. Now you've got an overwhelming, situation for your brain, and you're staring at the screen. You're going to hold your breath, and you're going to start to open your mouth. Of the course of opening those emails, the mouth falls open, you shorten your breath, and you get these very shallow, so you're barely pulling any oxygen in. It's called email apnea. So if you're doing that all day long, and then you're going to your doctor with neck, shoulder pain, whatever, but they're not looking at what you're doing at your job and how you're breathing, we're missing the biggest piece of the puzzle.
I'm mind blown at how something so natural, how we should just be doing this natural thing, is causing so much shit.
Yeah. Biochemically. This is another thing that most people don't look at all, is the biochemical realm of breath. Let's look at how it affects digestion first, and even cavities. So when we're nasal breathing, our mouth is closed. We have the mucus that lines the inside of our nasal cavity. That mucus is actually filled with secretory IgA, which is the first line of defense in our immune system. So if we're mouth breathing, we're skipping that first line of defense. If we're mouth breathing, we're going to increase our cortisol because it's more stressful. This is the breath that we should be taking when we're running from a tiger. We're pulling in as much oxygen as we can that's needed short term. But when we're stuck in this state, now we're stuck with high cortisol from mouth breathing. Our hydrochloric acid, our stomach acid that we need to start the digestion processes, is already going to be diminished because we're in a stress state, because we're mouth breathing. And then if we're stressed, we're going to mouth breathe. So remember, this is a feedback loop. Just because I'm saying you're breathing wrong, cortisol's high, it can also go backwards. Almost everything I say today can go backwards. Think of all of this as a loop. So boss comes in, gives you a big assignment. All of a sudden you're stressed. Now you're mouth breathing. Oh, it's lunch. I got to run, grab lunch. But we haven't looked at how we're breathing. So now we sit down to eat. We've been mouth breathing. We've got email apnea. Our cortisol is high. We have no stomach acid. We've been breathing in all of the toxins, not just from the air, but bacteria like airborne parasites, you name it. That's all supposed to be filtered out here. Now it's all in our mouth. Now what do? We put a bite of food in our mouth. We swallow it. What's that go to? Our digestive tract. If we don't have the stomach acid as the first line of defense to kill off all of those toxins and bacteria, what are we doing to our gut? So for those who are looking for gut health, the first place I start is with the breath. Same thing. So whether you're coming to me with health issues or physical issues, this is the key. Another factor, I don't know if I want to go into that yet. I want to talk about the importance of CO2, but that's going to take us down a little bit of a rabbit hole. So I kind of want to hit the psychological piece. The psychological lens, when you're mouth breathing, you're going to induce that stress state. So a lot of people think of anxiety, and they think of all of the external factors that are causing their anxiety, but how many people don't consider the fact that their initial stress is coming from the inside? So if you're, I have a family member who gets stressed very, very easily. I mean, she startles very easy. It's because her cortisol is always ramped up. She thinks she struggles with anxiety, but when I watch her breathe, I'm like, she could take anxiety meds. Sure, it might Band-Aid it, but her breath is going to completely change how she sees and experiences her external world. So even if your external world is stressful, you can manage it internally. But if your internal world is what's causing stress, you will not be able to manage or change the external world. Your perception is perceived threat, and that's all you see. So I don't care if it's your kid coming in, like, kid runs into the room and all of a sudden someone like jumps and startles. If that's happening to you, you're probably not breathing well all day long. And so that's forcing you into that psychological state of anxiety.
So that's a safety mechanism for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That happens to me all the time, actually.
Mhm.
Like Sean will walk up behind me and start talking, and I didn't know who was there. I'm like,
Startle response. Yep, absolutely.
Great.
So one time this was several years ago, I went on a girls' trip, and so there were 6 of us, something like that. And so somebody was sleeping on the pull-out mattress. And whenever I walked out of the bedroom, she was sleeping on the mattress with mouth tape. And I freaked out. I did not know what was happening.
Bound and gagged.
I'm like, who is here? What are we doing? And it startled her. She woke up and she took it off. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is actually happening? And so it started this whole conversation, and I was frightened for my life. I did not know what was happening. And also, so, I mean, I've heard about mouth tape. This was probably, 7 years ago. And then just maybe like 2 weeks ago, I'm in my son's bedroom and he has mouth tape on his dresser or whatever. And I said, how do you know about this? And he's like, what are you talking about? And like, we never really got into it, but he's like, it doesn't work. And I said, how do you know it doesn't work? And he said, well, it's not on my mouth. It came off. So I don't know. He just had bad mouth tape or whatever. But so this, my son's 17. Like, what 17-year-old is talking
huge.
about
That's really
mouth tape? I can assure you it's something that he saw somewhere on
online
social media or something.
Some Instagram, like,
yeah.
Get better at performance, get faster,
right,
take her
right.
off.
But so it's catching on. It is a thing that, it's at least in my world, I've seen it and talked about it several times.
But isn't it the same idea, basically, literally a Band-Aid? Like, shouldn't you be doing that without needing mouth tape?
Yes, and.
But you're at
It's
night,
a
like,
good
you
place
can't have control.
to start. So a lot of people just rely on mouth tape. If you can't nose breathe, we have to look at why. So there are some real anatomical reasons someone cannot breathe through their nose, and that might require surgery or things like that. Although Patrick McKeown is the inventor, not inventor because he's
Founder.
Thank you. The creator of Oxygen Advantage. And he's worked with thousands and thousands of people. And I believe out of 7,000 people, he said only 15 of them actually had to have a surgery to go back to nasal breathing. Whereas in your literature, most people say 40% are anatomically unable to nose breathe.
That's big mouth tape right there talking.
That's big mouth tape. Now, when you're sleeping, it is important because you want to create this habit. But you really are going to get better at sleeping with your mouth closed by practicing the tongue placement during the day. So the best time to use mouth tape is during the day. If you work at a computer, I really prefer small pieces of medical tape. Just take a little strip and strip it here. It's not this big obnoxious thing. You take it, your kids, if they game, let that be you want a game? Here's your mouth tape on top of your Xbox or PlayStation. Mm-hmm. Put this on your mouth. That's our trade. You know what I mean? If my kid's gaming, I'm going to make sure he's breathing well. Well, like that's
actually genius.
You don't have to talk either.
Yeah, exactly.
But so you want to strengthen the tongue. There's another tool that you could use. It's called a myo-nasal straw by Remastered Sleep. And you're literally sucking like you would be nursing. And so you have to use your tongue, and you will get sore all through those deep cervical flexors of the neck. Your tongue is sore. All of that makes it more possible for your tongue to rest at its home easily, effortlessly. That will translate to sleeping better and not needing tape. I first started using mouth tape when I first started doing this, but then it really quickly got annoying. So then my second trick was I would take my sheets and I'd wrap it up and I'd sleep on my side and kind of push, and I would recreate that suction every time I'd wake up. And now I don't need it at all. So
that makes more sense. Yeah, because I dabbled with the mouth tape, and it's just you're unconscious basically. Correct. Whenever you're sleeping. So
it can encourage the habit. But if you don't have the muscular strength, it's not going to hold. It's not going to stick. Mm-hmm. So it's a tool.
So let's talk about, you want to get into CO2?
Yeah, CO2. Okay. So a lot of people are thinking about breath, and they think about the inhale. They think about the oxygen we're taking in. So the amount of oxygen we're taking in is coming in with the inhale, but the amount of oxygen we can use is dependent upon our CO2 tolerance. Most of us think about food, and some of us think about water when it comes to getting healthier, and some of us think about exercise, but none of us think about oxygen. We all kind of know we need it, but we don't think about it as anything except for this like thing that we just take advantage of.
We just
coming
do it
in.
no matter what.
I just, whatever. But it is a nutrient. Oxygen is a nutrient. And we've all been taught that CO2 is this waste gas when it's actually not. So it's the CO2 that is going to determine how much oxygen we can utilize. So as you breathe in, you're going to oxygenate the hemoglobin. So hemoglobin comes in, oxygen binds to it, but it's our CO2 levels that determine whether or not that oxygen can be unbound and utilized. So people who are taking all these deep breaths, you'll find people who experience breathlessness and they're, or all of a sudden they'll notice they're not breathing and then take a big sigh. Or when you feel breathless, we've all been told, take a deep breath. When you're anxious, take a deep breath. That's actually not what we need. It is the opposite. So oxygen is going to upregulate our sympathetic nervous system. This is intentional. This is that threat response. There's a tiger. I'm going to run. And what this does, okay, let's go back to, y'all are going to have to keep me on track here, but let's go.
Is that why the paper bag thing works?
Like hyperventilation? So hyperventilation can create an upregulation of the nervous system. It is something that can be used for like emergency bouts, right? But like if this is not something we should do all the time, and I would argue you should not be doing breath work that creates hyperventilation unless you've focused on your foundation, which is kind of like...
So no Wim Hof.
No Wim Hof. Especially if you're fighting with like chronic pain or illness or anything. It's the same thing with fasting and cold plunging in my book. We should not be doing any deep breathing that gets us into these high states. Like everybody thinks about the things that make us feel alive. Cold plunging, fasting, breath work is becoming one of those things. Big holotropic breaths where we're hyperventilating. It is going to create this buzz in the system. It feels good. It's this rush. That is not what most people need.
Because we're all just junkies.
We are junkies. We are searching for cortisol and adrenaline. And I definitely fell into all of those traps. I'm definitely not the person who didn't do those things. I did all those things, knew how good they made me feel. And I was like, this is it. And then you hit a wall. Or you learn something. And then you realize, oh, wait, that feels good, but that's not what I need. And a lot of my clients that come to me, I have to teach them, yes, this feels good, but it's short term. And we have to look at what it's doing physiologically long term. So carbon dioxide, I actually try to encourage people to breathe slower and lighter, not deeper. The cue is not wrong. A deep breath, the cue itself, the verbiage is not wrong, but it's misinterpreted.
So I think, is that why, like whenever you're highly anxious, the goal is to breathe in, but breathe out for a count or two longer than
extend your exhale longer than your inhale, because that increases your CO2 tolerance. Now you have in your brainstem chemoreceptors that are going to sense your levels of CO2. The more sensitive those are, the worse this is for you, the less you can manage stress. So what makes us take a deep breath is those sensors. We need them. We need them to be somewhat sensitive, because as soon as we run out of oxygen and that CO2 increases, we need to be able to create that gas exchange. However, when those receptors are so sensitive that the slightest rise in CO2 makes us feel like we need to take a breath, that becomes detrimental. So that can tell us, if this is happening over and over and over throughout the day, that our CO2 is too low to be able to utilize the oxygen. Does that make sense?
Is that something that you improve by practicing exhales?
Yes, practicing exhales. But before you even focus on extending your exhales or doing any breath holding, which is ideally where I want to get people to be, I have them first focus on the pace of the breath. I don't want people to think about the depth. I don't want people to even think about where it's going at first. I just want to get them to slow it down and find a state of relaxation. So the breath is this really cool thing that we can use as a tool to change our autonomic nervous system. We're taught that it's automatic and we have no control over it. However, that's actually inaccurate. Our breath gives us the ability to tap into the sympathetic fight or flight, or your parasympathetic rest, digest, repair, and all of that. So we can become anxious and get into that stress state. And then in that stress state, we can intentionally slow our breath. Don't even think about the depth. Let's just slow it down first. It will naturally start to deepen. And then we're going to be breathing deep and slow to stimulate more of that CO2 rise. But if you have someone who's been stuck in a very chronic stress state, whether that's pain, divorce, like whatever it is, they're going to be less, their chemoreceptors are going to be more sensitive. So as soon as they feel that rise in CO2, it doesn't just bring the sense of breathlessness, it can also increase anxiety states.
Great.
Wow.
So we want to think about, yes, we want to get into the breath holding realm, but the simplest thing that you can do is set a reminder, set a timer on your phone. For the first week, set it to go off every hour on the hour. We just need to become more aware and just think about your breath. All of a sudden that alarm goes off and we're like, oh, what was my breath doing? Was I holding it? Am I breathing at all? Am I, short, shallow? Is it all in the chest? One of the things that we have to start to do to change the breath is become more aware of it. And that's where most people fall. Like they don't know what they're doing on a regular basis, so they don't know how to change it. So that's the first tool I give people is to set your timer and just become aware. What is your breath pattern? What is your habit of breathing in different scenarios? And that's why I want them to do this for a week, because they're going to notice when they're home, it's a little bit different. When they're at work, it's a little bit different. When they're around their kids, it's going to be a lot different. And so they're starting to gain these awarenesses. And then week 2, you're still going to keep that alarm every hour on the hour. And now every time that alarm goes off, we're consciously thinking, okay, can I slow my breath down? Yeah, I'm thinking in the background, can I deepen it? But pace first. Can I slow it down? Can I use my diaphragm? And then as we start to become more habitual in that awareness and the slowing down, then we can start to work toward getting it even slower, holding breaths, breath holds in the exhale and all of that, those kinds of things.
Tell us about the diaphragm.
Oh, what do you want to know about it?
Well, I mean, if you are not conscious of breath and it's not something you've ever really thought much about, which I would venture to say that most people don't think about it unless it becomes problematic, then the diaphragm, like we know that it sits like right under your ribs, but like what is the importance of the diaphragm in breath?
Okay, so when you breathe, your diaphragm is going to descend. And this, I'm going to have to cross again a couple of realms, because when that diaphragm descends, it's going to press on your organs. This creates an expression of blood. Yeah, it creates this pumping. So it pushes all the blood out. And then when you exhale, that diaphragm lifts back up and it lets all the blood flow back into your organs. So it creates this pumping mechanism. If we're never using our diaphragm, how are our organs suffering from this lack of pumping over
how do we know
years?
if we're using our diaphragm?
Okay, look down at your chest, and I want you to open your mouth and take a big deep breath. Just watch your chest. See it rise? Okay, now this is going to kind of prove my point earlier. I want you to do the same thing, looking down. Use your nose, but make it louder. I want you to hear it. See our chest rises? You're not using your diaphragm in either of those breaths. So there's people who are taking deep breaths because they're anxious. Wood fires, neck muscles, chest. That's your secondary respiratory system. This is almost like deadlifting the rib cage all day long. That's not using the diaphragm. Now, our diaphragm can get, I'll just call it like amnesia, right? So when our diaphragm has amnesia, we're breathing like this all the time. Now I want you to look at your chest again, but you're going to slow your breath down. I want you to take a silent, slow, and deep breath. If you're unable to use your diaphragm, you'll still see your chest move. But if you're able to make that switch, your chest will not move at all. You're using your diaphragm. Now, how can you feel this in your body? You kind of can't unless you're using some tactile feedback. So if you take your hands now, and I'm going to have you sit up a little bit, and you're going to find your last rib. You're going to wrap your hands around the base of your rib cage.
You don't have any? Oh my gosh. Okay.
So I want you to make sure your thumbs are wrapped around the back. Make sure you can feel that. Now, take a chest breath where you feel your chest rising. Notice that there's no movement on the thumbs and the hands from your back. Now, take that slow, deep breath. If you have the ability to use your diaphragm, you should feel some lateral expansion and your thumb should move back a little bit. That means that the posterior fibers of your diaphragm are actually functioning and we're creating some rib cage mobility. You can feel how that happens. That's kind of how we know. That's how I know if someone's using their diaphragm.
Well, everybody should have the ability to use their diaphragm, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for sure.
But it should
we
be
don't.
easier than it is. Like it should be more.
It should be natural.
Yeah.
It should be automatic. But we don't live in a natural, normal world anymore. If you look at the textbooks, the normal breath rate is 12 to 16 breaths a minute. That is not normal. That is common. That is modern lifestyle normal. If you take a healthy person, once you correct their breath pattern and all the other factors, that lend to poor health. Once you correct those things and then you test their breath rate, you can look at this in the Heart Math Institute. Their breath rate is going to drop down to 6 to 8 breaths per minute. That's much more diaphragmatic, calming. Now this ties into the biological oscillators, and this is very, very cool. So if you take your the 3 biological oscillators in the body are your heart, which is the biggest. It's an electromagnetic pump, and then your brain, and then your gut. And all 3 of them should work together. When we're breathing at a rate of 12 to 16 breaths per minute, we're in that stress state. Higher is going to be more stress, but that 12 to 16,
So what we're considering normal is still a stressed state.
Absolutely. Now, you take that 6 to 8 breaths per minute in a healthier state. This is our parasympathetic state. If you start to breathe 6 to 8 breaths per minute, which equates about like 10 seconds a breath, roughly.
Sounds so slow.
Think about it.
That should be like
10 seconds a breath. That's
every
5
day.
seconds in, 5 seconds out. It's really not slow if you think about it. Like if you do the math, but it feels slow because like, holy, that's a whole minute. Like I breathe a lot more rapidly than that. Most of us are over breathing. But so now when we have this overbreathing, this higher breath rate per minute, we get into a state where we become out of sync. So our brain is racing, thoughts are all over the place, our heart rhythm is irregular because our breath rate is irregular, and that affects our digestion. So whenever we drop our breath into the 6 to 8 breaths per minute, we're actually syncing. Textbooks say that the peristalsis happens every 6 to 8 seconds. So it syncs up, and the brain is like, oh, everything's working well, so we're going to all relax. Everything feels smooth, fluid. It's like cruising down a trail, being able to observe everything and, I'm finding this or I'm finding that little. You can pay attention to all these finer details. Your body has then the energy to take care of all the things that it puts on the back burner when it doesn't have enough energy for rest, repair, and all of those things. Now, if you take that 12 to 16 breath rate, it's almost like driving down the interstate and you're flooring the gas pedal and you're pumping the brake intermittently. And our brain and our guts and our hearts are just all out of sync. It's very, very jarring for the system. So that's kind of like
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I'm very excited
Tell
to
us,
practice this.
you've mentioned it a few times, but give us the correlation between breath and cortisol specifically.
Okay.
So I'm hooked on a little cortisol spin right now. So tell us how breath and cortisol relate like directly.
When we overbreathe, we're taking in more oxygen. The more oxygen we take in, the more our brain perceives there's a threat because it's trying to run from a tiger, right? So when we're overbreathing, which means big inhales, or like you'll hear in yoga, that ujjayi breath, or that quick, rapid, either one of those can be overbreathing. It's going to increase the amount of oxygen that we have in our blood because we're taking it in. Doesn't mean it's usable.
Because of the CO2 situation. Like
Yes,
the exhale.
CO2 is going to make it unbind. Now, in the presence of increased oxygen in our blood, we increase the sympathetic nervous system. So that's what spikes cortisol. Now, this happens because we need to survive in emergency situations. And go back to the, tiger
So
example.
it's a safety mechanism for us, but we're not
Correct.
intended to be there chronically. We should
Correct.
just be very acute situations.
Now, what happens is oxygen is a vasoconstrictor. So, our sympathetic nervous system increases, all of our veins constrict. What happens is it shunts about 5/6 of the blood out of your organs into your limbs so you can run as fast as you can or fight or whatever. And so that all happens because we have so much oxygen that our our veins constrict and shunt our blood to the limbs. So physiologically, that's why it raises cortisol, because we need to run from a threat. The problem is when we never reverse that breath and now we stay there.
So now we don't have enough oxygen in our organs, so everything starts
Digestion
dysfunctioning.
slows. Yeah. So then we have food. Like, so if we're constantly in that stressed breath, our brain is in a stressed state, the last thing we have time for is digestion. We don't have time to digest. We don't even have time for immune function. So actually our immune function will lower as well. So we talked about nose breathing kind of giving you that first line of defense for your immune system. Mouth breathing avoids that. Well, overbreathing is going to actually down-regulate your immune response because we're running from tigers. We don't have time to fight the flu. We don't have time to eliminate and cause constipation. We don't have time to digest. All of those things get put on the back burner, and
They're just not
cortisol spikes.
prioritized.
Exactly. Yeah, and that could go on for years. It's not just like, oh, okay, we're just going to switch back. You have to be conscious. You have to make that conscious effort.
You won't poo for years?
I mean, you'll poo eventually. Some people go long time, and they won't feel it. They won't even feel.
They won't know that they need to.
Yes, it's a very
That's
interesting
wild.
thing, and all of that can come from the breath. Because when you're running from a tiger, you're not pooping. It's not going to happen. But all of that, like increasing cortisol, is going to increase muscle tone, and so you have people that pop their joints a lot. I am one of those people. I'm constantly cracking my joints. It started as a kid. I had a very stressful environment as a kid. I didn't realize that that's why I was popping my knuckles, but like it creates this constant muscle tone that creates joint compression, which then you get all of this desire to like pop and crack and all of those things.
I pop my
It's just
knuckles
this
all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
It started because in seventh grade there was this guy that did it all the time, and I thought it was cool.
That's why I started popping my back, because the girl next to me, she did this cool thing where she all the way up, and I was like, I want to do it, and so I did it so much I could finally get a pop.
Yeah,
worst thing. So bad for you.
I also don't think I ever got an answer to my paper bag question.
Why is it
like whenever you're panic attack breathing?
So let's go to the Wim Hof. Let's go to Wim Hof breathing. It's kind of similar to the paper bag. It's going to create an excitation in the central nervous system.
That's fast breathing.
Fast breathing. Okay. Yeah, it's overbreathing.
Are they supposed to be breathing fast when you're breathing in a paper
it's
bag?
the intentional the method or the mechanism.
Okay, so it's breathe in a
very fast, not in a paper bag.
You're not in a
just
paper
very
bag,
fast.
but it's the same idea. It's the same concept.
Okay,
it's an excitation of the nervous system, which feels really good.
Is that supposed to calm you down?
Well, it can create. So
what's it supposed to do?
So when you're hyperventilating, it's going to drop carbon dioxide, raise oxygen. What did I say was that driver for the breath? To take that breath was higher levels of CO2. Always kind of have to make sure I don't get these crossed. Higher levels of CO2 is going to drive that chemosensitivity in order to make you gasp for air. What we're doing when we're hyperventilating is we're pushing all of the CO2 out. So when we go and hold that breath, the Wim Hof breath is like 30. Some people do it through their nose. Some people do it through their mouth. He says it doesn't matter. I really don't think you should ever be breathing through your mouth unless you are dying and you have to. I really, really feel that way strongly. He says it doesn't matter. He's the expert in this. He's done all the studies. I don't know. But what I think is that once you get into that state where you have less CO2, now you go into these breath holds. After you hyperventilate, you can hold your breath for so much longer. It's going to still give you the access to the autonomic nervous system. It still has lots of benefits. However, what Wim Hof is doing is he's working the edges, right? He's seeing how we can improve all of these functions. What I'm talking about today is that might be great, and that is something we should do and should work toward, but we're not going to breathe like that all the time. We definitely don't want to breathe like that all the time. It can be a tool that we use to create elevated states. It can actually be really good for trauma, anxiety, all of these things, but functionally, it's kind of how I work with everything.
So what do you think about Wim Hof for like training? I have a friend who's a marathon runner. And
not a problem.
That's not for like foundational breathing.
That's exactly right. But how is he breathing foundationally? So I'm okay with someone doing Wim Hof training to enhance their performance if they can breathe right at rest. So that's where it's like, Wim Hof's taken off and it become all the rage and everybody's doing all this holotropic breathing. It could be making your situation worse. It could be exciting your nervous system so much more and preventing you from healing instead of doing the opposite. So it's not like we should never do it, but who are you? Where are you? Where are you starting from? Do you have the foundation to breathe right all day long? Slow, naturally deep breaths that aren't, putting you in those hyperventilation states.
So you mentioned that he said it's okay to breathe in
Through your
or
mouth.
out,
Mhm.
your mouth or your nose. I actually did a breathwork session a couple months ago, I guess, and it was breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. I think, or maybe it was out. I don't know.
That's
There was a
probably
lot
probably
of
right.
like in through your mouth moments though,
Mhm.
and it was supposed to be. I think the duration of this thing was like inhaling through your mouth, and I literally felt like I was suffocating,
Mhm.
and I just didn't listen at all to the. I just ignored the facilitator completely, and I just
That's okay.
breathed through my nose the whole time. But
Yep.
what is the methodology behind doing something like that? Like, do you fundamentally disagree with?
why would you go and do those hyperventilation breaths? Is that
It wasn't even hyperventilation. It was just like
Just
Well,
everything
that's-
through your mouth.
everything through your mouth.
that's hyperventilation.
Okay.
Probably a holotropic breathwork
Okay.
session. It's probably what
I
I'm
don't know
thinking.
what was the.
It can put you into these altered states.
I think that was the.
You know what? Listen, I did a breathwork session and I had a core memory come up. I always, we all have trauma or whatever. Like my thing is just like so many other people's is I'm not good enough. I always looked at my dad and how that played into that belief system. But I did one of those holotropic breathwork sessions and I had this very, very vivid memory of me holding on or like reaching for my mom and she was leaving. She was probably going out with her friends or something. She had me a little young and I was with my grandma she was my rock. So it wasn't like she was leaving me in this traumatic situation. It was a totally normal situation. But in that breathwork session, I realized I had that memory come up. And as a little girl, I don't know what happened before that moment, but as a little girl, I told myself, I'm not good enough for her to stay. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. I've got to be better to be accepted. And so those breathwork sessions can be really powerful. I've done more since then. Never happened again. Literally have not had an experience from that at all. So like, I don't know. I had a powerful, moving, literally life-changing experience and it was great. But some people like just chase that all the time and they don't think about how they're breathing in the other. We take 25,900 breaths a day. If we're breathing 25,900 times wrong, and then we go to that breathwork session, it's not going to do anything beneficial for us long term.
Well, I'm glad to know now that that wasn't just how she was thinking that we should breathe, because I was panicking like, this lady is like has lost her mind. Like, how can I breathe for 30 minutes?
It's very, very popular.
Yeah.
I don't love it.
I didn't like it at all.
You didn't hallucinate?
Well, the whole time I was thinking about how I was suffocating.
gonna
So
die.
no, I never reached the like altered state
So
that
you were
I.
in a panic state the whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That's what's supposed to happen when you're
Okay.
hyperventilating.
That sounds so much fun.
I hated it.
But now let's take someone. That's a really good example, Jackie, because let's take someone who is in a higher stress state, right? You do a lot of things, and you're a mom. What mother who's trying to manage so many things in life? It's like you're constantly carrying 100 dinner plates and trying not to drop one. What mother isn't going to have a higher nervous system or a higher state, higher cortisol levels, and have that higher nervous state? But then you take someone in that position and you put them into a breathwork practice that induces more anxiety and more upregulation of the nervous system. And you're going to walk away being like, what the hell did I just do? That doesn't feel good to me, because you need the opposite. And it's important to know. It's important for people to know when you're on your health journey, where are you starting? That's how you know what path to take next.
I tell people a lot of times, like we have to figure out, like, what are we starting with? So I think everybody can relate to the fact that if we were going to say, okay, we need to save $10,000, we have to then look at how are you spending your money? Like, what is your budget? So you have to know where you're starting before you can develop any kind of path to move forward. So it's the same thing, it sounds like, with breath. If you're not starting well, or you don't even know what you breathe like, then we don't know what direction we need to go to change.
That's right.
To improve it, I guess.
So a good way for people to know whether or not they're in a state of optimal breathing is to test your BOLT score. So it's the body oxygen level test. And what you're going to do is this is ideal to do right upon waking, because you've been breathing your natural breath all night, or at least be resting for 10 minutes. So if you've been in a rest state for 10 minutes, it's a good time to check it. Don't do this after exercise or after talking a lot. Talking a lot too. You'll hear me like gasp for breath. I should be slowing down, pausing, breathing through my nose more, but I'm trying to get a lot of information. That's where my breath suffers because I do talk for a living. I talk a lot. I got a lot of stuff to teach people. And so you'll notice if you're someone who there is always doing that, you need to work on your breath, and your bolt score is going to be low, probably under 10 seconds. I tested mine the other day and it was about I think 12 seconds, which you don't want it under 10, but that's just because I talk a lot. So I'll have 3 days where I'm working a lot in the week. And then Friday through Monday, I'm doing a lot of back end work. I'm not working in person with clients as much. I have half days. And so I'm not gasping for breath as much. I notice I digest better. My nervous system is a lot more, it's just a lot different. You can feel these subtleties, but it's not that if you talk for a living, I don't want you to think it's detrimental. I personally have to be better about when I am not talking, closing my mouth, slowing my breath down, and getting those longer exhales. When I'm good about doing that, I don't find those negative effects of overexertion or talking or whatever. Bolt score.
How would one do this?
Bolt score. So we're going to, I know, I ramble. I'm sorry, y'all.
Look, we're all ADD here except for Daphne. So
Daphne has no clue what's going on.
Pretty much.
Daphne's like, come on, give me a
trying
straight
to
line,
stay
y'all.
on the waves.
Oh, wait. Oh, this way. Oh, okay, I'm trying to follow.
That's why I brought the whiteboard, because there's so many lenses and they all overlap. And so you can kind of see the complexity of all of this. One little change in something affects everything else. It creates a cascade of events. So it is hard to stay on topic here. The bolt score. All right, let's try this again. So you're going to do this upon waking or after 10 minutes of rest. This is not about how long you can hold your breath. I'm going to say that again. This is not about willpower and how long you can hold your breath. We are testing your body's, not your mind's, your body's first signal that it needs air. So you're going to take, not big, definitely don't want to start with big breaths in. Take a couple, maybe 3 smaller breaths. So think half breaths in and out. We're all going to test ours. Okay, so after a couple of light breaths, remember not big, you're going to exhale everything out, and then you're going to pinch your nose with your fingers so we can't cheat. And then hold on, both of y'all pinch them at the same time, and then I want y'all
exhale everything out.
Yep, exhale everything out, pinch them, go at the same time. Dustin, you're going to press start. Okay, as soon as you feel a muscle contraction or psychological need to gasp for air, I want you to, again, this is not about time. No, keep it going. Good. What is that? 7 and 14? Is that what I saw?
4:07 and 11:38.
Okay. So both of those are very, very terrible bolt scores. And that's okay.
Well, I can tell you that whenever you tell me to pinch my nose, all of a sudden I start to panic and I'm like, I need to breathe right now.
It's because your chemosensitivity is so high. Now, you're just more sensitive to carbon dioxide. Now, even elite athletes, y'all, can have a really bad bolt score. If I'm not continually doing breath work, I have a really bad bolt score because of what I do for a living. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal, but that's your baseline. So if you have someone who's just done this test and they have a score 10 seconds or less, they're going to feel breathlessness during exercise much faster than someone who has a score between 10 and 20 seconds. After you get a bolt score of 20 to 40 seconds within that realm, you really notice a huge, drastic increase of sports performance, balance, coordination, power, output, all the things. Everything improves. But if that bolt score is closer to 10 seconds, we're stuck in those emergency states. Our central nervous system is more revved up, and we can't get into that parasympathetic state nearly as easily because we're excited so much faster. It's either a muscle contraction, the first muscle contraction, or, oh my God, I need to breathe. But if you have to gasp for air on the other side of that breath hold, you've held your breath too long. So definitely making sure that when you breathe, it's a controlled breath. You might have to test it a couple times. You're like, oh shit.
How does asthma play into this?
Asthma. So asthma is going to be something that most people can overcome if they start to force nasal breathing. Let's say we've been mouth breathing because we have asthma since we were a kid. The more you breathe through your mouth, the harder it becomes to breathe through your nose. You can actually get inflammation of all the blood vessels. It feels clogged. So there's an exercise that you can do. It's called the nose unblocking exercise. And you're going to do kind of the same thing. We're starting with that not big breaths. I don't want you to start any of these exercises with big, and it's something that people naturally do. I say, okay, we're going to go into a breath hold, and your immediate response is, okay, get as much oxygen as I can, but that's not the goal. So we're still breathing light. We're going to use this to unblock the nose. This is someone who, if you have an iPhone, if you take your iPhone and put it right underneath your nose and you breathe for a couple of breaths, you pull that away, you can actually see one side of your nose. Sorry, Dustin. You can actually see one side of your nose with a bigger vapor patch than the other. Now, this is going to alternate naturally throughout the day, left side, right side, because what side of your nose you breathe on depends on what side of the brain is primarily activated. It should be alternating throughout the day, but some people get stuck. People with asthma may have a complete, not a complete blockage of their nose, but almost complete, right? And so you can do this exercise where if you find, I like to do this test for people because they can visually see the difference, but you'll feel it as well. So you're just walking around and then you're going to take some light breaths and then you exhale everything out, hold your nose, you walk or jog in place for as long as you need to feel medium air hunger. That air hunger, I haven't mentioned that. You're going to start to feel air hunger as those CO2 levels rise. It's that desire to breathe. You're not trying to last as long as you can. You want to get that medium air, the air hunger to about like a medium level. Then you want to control your breath in. That first breath might be harder to control, but you should be able to recover on the second and third breath. Then we're going to breathe normally, lightly for about a minute, and then we're going to do it again. After you do this for 4 rounds, holding your nose, walking or jogging in place, recover breath for a minute, do it again. 3 to 4 rounds, you're going to notice your nose completely unblocks. If it stays that way for a minute, you will not need surgery to repair whatever's blocking your nose. You can most likely overcome it through lots of practice. If it recloses and you aren't finding lasting results, you probably are a candidate for someone who needs surgery. But with asthma, you can actually reverse asthma by nose breathing, increasing CO2 tolerance and all of those things. The founder of Oxygen Advantage, Patrick McKeown, he had severe asthma as a kid, doesn't anymore. So it's definitely something you can overcome. Oh, can we talk real quick about these stupid mouth guards that all of these football kids are like the kids, y'all, okay, I have a kid who plays flag football and I'm watching these mouth guards that they're designing for these children now, and they're designing them to mouth breathe. It's like this big old pacifier looking thing with a hole so they can pull air through their mouth, and it is making me so angry. I'm sure I'm the only mom on the sideline who's like, get that shit out of their mouth, but like I am, and I'm looking how it's going to affect sports performance, but not just that. They're on tablets all day. Like, what are we doing to our youth? It's not just text neck anymore. It's now mouth breathing. It just compounds. And so yeah, if you're a mom watching, I fight the fight to get my kid the one that he puts in his mouth so I can encourage him to nose breathe. He fights me on a lot of things. So last year I was like, fine, get the one, like you buy it, you get yours. And I did start to notice how, like, I would point out to him how he was fatiguing a little faster. So that's kind of cool. Sometimes you have to let them
figure
learn
it out
the hard way. Yeah.
It's kind of cool. I got to say I told you so.
No, as a mom, you never say I told you so. You never say it.
You
just
say it,
there's
you
a
feel
look.
it.
You just text your other mom friends and say,
Exactly.
I told
you
him.
just bathe in it.
Oh, wait, you're more tired? I wonder what's happening with that. So the sarcasm comes out. I never say I told you so. Ever.
So improving your Bolt score is done by practicing the breathing.
You don't improve your Bolt score by practicing the Bolt score test.
Right.
Good point. You improve your Bolt score by working on slowing your breath down. Light, slow breaths, diaphragmatic. So we should feel low, deep breaths. We should feel the rib cage moving out and in, not into the chest. And then we can work on our breath holds. So as we start to work on that slow, light breathing, getting our exhales longer than the inhales, then we can switch to something that's going to induce air hunger and start to help us desensitize those chemoreceptors. So now
I get air hunger all the time.
Yeah,
and I've always said that it was because I had asthma as a kid. Like, oh, it's just like a side effect.
They're tiny. So, okay, hold on. Remind me where I am with this. I want to go back to Dustin's allergies real quick because that brings up free radicals. People who had asthma as a kid, they're going to have more free radicals because they're mouth breathing. And then that's going to affect how many allergies they have, right? We also talked about increasing cortisol when we're mouth breathing, which inhibits the immune system. So now we're looking at allergies that are going to affect everything else too. It's this cascading event. So you have asthma, you have allergies, you have all these things. Now you're growing up and you're talking for a living. How many other physiological things has it affected? You being a gut coach, how is your gut, and you might always have to be focusing on fine tuning these little things and eating just the right thing because it's being negatively affected in the background by your breathing. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, all the information, but if you're still talking all day and not considering how sensitive you are to CO2, that might be affecting your gut. And I'm just bringing up gut because you might notice certain things.
Yeah.
And in more stressful weeks, you might notice other symptoms. Same thing I do. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I noticed that. Well, I know why that is.
I can tell you right now, I've never considered how sensitive my CO2 is. Never. I mean, I consider a lot of things, but that is not anything that has ever crossed my brain. So
now it will be.
Most people.
It will be, yeah.
Most people are that way. Okay, what did I say? I'm coming back
to. We're
to.
talking about improving the Bolt score by not practicing the Bolt score.
Take y'all through a breath exercise. What if y'all do this with me? I prefer if people are laying down, especially in the beginning, but y'all are seated and that's fine.
That's not happening.
On the ground.
I'll lay down. Can you get me on the video?
That will not be a flattering angle. I am not consenting. You can lay. You do it the right way.
That's right.
Applesauce.
Okay, so if you lay down with
Won't
your...
be in the video at all.
Well, no, it's okay. She's just going to be breathing. I'm going to set this timer and we're going to do this for about 4 minutes. So if you're listening to the podcast, I definitely don't do this while definitely don't do this while driving. I have had a friend pass out while trying to hold his breath driving. I don't recommend it. Please don't do that. Now that everyone's lying down or at least seated, if you're lying down, bend your knees so your spine's in neutral. And I want you for the first minute to just not think about anything except how much you can relax on the exhale and how much you can slowly inhale. We're not thinking about depth. I want you to think about the pace. How slow can we get our breath? And as we start to slow it down, we can then direct where it's going to be in the body. So now I want you to imagine we're breathing down into the pelvis, out into the lower back. The sides of the ribs expand, the upper back expands. And again, on that exhale, everything softens. And on your exhale, start to make sure that you're releasing all of that stale air. Now for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to have you shorten your inhale. So our inhales are only going to be 2/3 in length. And your exhales as long as you can possibly make it. But the key is, again, no force. So I want you to breathe so soft and so slowly that you don't feel, you could imagine that the hairs in the nose won't even move. You don't feel any air moving through the nostrils. You're going to start to develop a sense of air hunger. Now, if your Bolt score is pretty low, you're going to develop this much sooner and pretty strong. So if you have to extend your inhales just by a little bit, then that's okay. But if you don't have to, then don't. Now, as air hunger starts to build, it feels uncomfortable, but physiologically, we're having a ton of benefits. So because that CO2 is building in the system, it is forcing that oxygen to be released from hemoglobin, and we're actually able at this point in time to absorb 40% more oxygen in the brain than if we were taking deep breaths. So although this is a little bit uncomfortable, we have about a minute left. You're setting yourself up to be more resilient to stress in every other arena of life. 30 seconds left. Now, the key is when you start to regain normal breathing, not to go back to gasping for air. Not quite yet. Still keeping those inhales slow, short. Exhale slow and very long. And on your next inhale, you're going to inhale a full breath and then exhale completely, and you'll do 3 of those. And you might notice that the saliva in your mouth has started to build. You might notice if your hands or feet were cold, they'll warm up. These are all signs that that parasympathetic nervous system is activating. We're stimulating the vagus nerve, which is happening because we're nose breathing. Good. Go ahead and blink the eyes open and just notice how you feel. So that was literally 3.5 minutes. Do y'all feel any different?
I'm very chill.
Yeah. Okay. 3 minutes. Daphne wants to take a nap and Jackie's incredibly chill. So we need to be doing that. And you probably notice the benefits within about 1.5 minutes. You'll start to, oh, wait, I'm a little bit calmer. Oh, that saliva is building up. If we did this before we ate every meal, we're setting ourselves for optimal digestion instead of going into it in a stress state where we don't have the blood flow in our organs to actually do the digesting.
That's one of the benefits of doing like a prayer before you eat, is that it forces you to slow down.
So much. You slow down, you breathe, and you connect. And when you're breathing, in that prayer, there was, I can't remember what prayer it was. I think it was in the James Nestor book. I'm pretty sure it's called Breath, if y'all haven't read that book. But I'm pretty sure it was in that book where he talks about what prayer was used. And it's similar all around the world, like the monks, the Catholics, like all of the people who chant. And there's a certain prayer that it puts them in a breath rate of 6 to 8 breaths per minute, which synchronizes all the biological oscillators, which for me, who, like when I work with bringing people back into the healing realm, I'm working from every avenue. And I really want to get them a sense of like self-love and oneness and connection with self, because that's where you really drive the most change. If someone is feeling frazzled and stressed, they're not going to make new habits. Syncing our breath and getting our biological oscillators in sync automatically kind of creates that sense of connection and oneness. And you can tap into that just in 2-3 minutes of breath. And yes, saying like thanks or any kind of prayer before food. It's all the same thing.
It sets you in the rest and digest.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very cool. So I guess I'll leave you all with a couple of tools. I talked about the straw already, mouth tape already, but one thing I did not mention is the, oh my God, I don't even know.
Breathe Right strips?
Yes, the Breathe Right strips. There are some that are magnetic. And they and they have different sizes. So if you're somebody who really has a stuffy nose, use that nose and blocking exercise, but then use those Breathe Right strips. Those are amazing.
Does he use the magnetic ones or the sticky ones?
Sticky ones.
I like the videos
I've tried
of the magnetics.
Because like, you can see how much. Yeah, I love it. Really good to sleep with too. You can do that breath work, not just before eating, but before sleep too. So if any of y'all have trouble sleeping, that'll put you right into that state where you can fall into a deep sleep.
Well, I'm excited to implement this into my life.
Yeah.
Slow down my breathing and hopefully not startle any time someone walks through the door.
If I do have classes on the schedule. So I have a couple of classes at Ethos. One, the CNS Reset is a class that I teach. I do a lot of breath work in that class. We do some gentle movement and things that kind of unlock the spine and down-regulate the nervous system, but it's very heavily based on breath work. And we also have a couple other teachers here who teach some breath-focused classes.
Well, since it's been over a year?
Right out a year for
right
sure.
around a year since you last came on. Can you update us on what it means to live vividly?
I don't remember what I said last time. I think I was so nervous last time. Like I don't even remember what it was. What I believe, I don't know, I'm always changing my mind and belief system. So maybe the answer is different than it was a year ago. I believe that being able to adapt into any environment is what it means to live vividly. It's not just, it's not about doing everything right. Like as much as I know I can't do everything right all the time, but I look at, can I adapt to it? And even if I'm having to do something that's a little suboptimal, how fast can I get back to homeostasis? That's what I think that people really need to consider when it comes to health and living well in our modern day world, because we can't avoid everything. I've tried. It's incredibly stressful. I don't recommend it. So as long as we can know when we're sliding off a little bit, but then course correct, I think that's all we really need to focus on. There's always coming back to balance.
Thanks for listening to Living Vividly. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. For more resources and details from today's discussion, check out the show notes. Until next time, keep living vividly.